In the shadows of a feudal era, the life of a samurai named Hirata took a tragic turn. He was mercilessly murdered by another samurai named Kurima. As Hirata drew his last breath, he managed to place a gleaming gold charm in his mouth, a mysterious act that would set in motion a series of events that would change the lives of those involved. Kurima found himself haunted by guilt and remorse, for Hirata was not just a random victim. He was also father of Yui, the woman Kurima had been betrothed to, and that seems very disturbing. The weight of the murder weighed heavily on his soul, leaving him tormented by his actions. In the midst of this turmoil, Kurima's life intersected with that of Usui Yuen, a man of intrigue and mystery. Usui sought Kurima's assistance in performing odd jobs, but Kurima initially declined. He revealed that his master, Matsumine, had ordered him to assassinate Hirata for his involvement in the opium trade. Kurima's shame was palpable, for he had taken the life of his own fiancé's father. But betrayal loomed around the corner as Kurima's own men turned against him, following Matsumine's orders. Faced with treachery, Kurima made a desperate leap from a cliff, narrowly escaping death. His men believed him to be dead, but fate had other plans. It was a young child who became Kurima's savior, nursing him back to consciousness in the safety of Usui's shop. As Kurima regained his strength, Usui unveiled a shocking truth. Matsumine was a real opium dealer, and Hirata had planned to expose him. In a web of deceit, Matsumine had manipulated Kurima into murdering Hirata, and then planned to eliminate Kurima to conceal his crimes. The gold charm that Hirata had clutched in his final moments was revealed to be a silent plea for revenge. It was Hirata's way of hiring Usui to avenge his murder. Realizing the depth of his manipulation and the gravity of his actions, Kurima decided to join forces with Usui and his team. Together, they hatched a daring plan to infiltrate Matsumine's castle. Of course, when the pivotal moment came, Kurima confronted Matsumine, and in a surge of justice, ended the man's corrupt reign, taking his life. Rushing to Yui's home, Kurima intended to confess his sins to take responsibility for his heinous act. However, it was a scene of heartbreaking tragedy he encountered. Yui had taken her own life, unable to bear the grief and shame that had befallen her family. And gosh, I don't know about you guys, but this seems just super depressing right now. As Kurima mourns the death of Yui, Usui reports the success of the mission to his superiors at the chapel, and suggests to his allies to bringing the samurai into their group. Meanwhile, a revenger doctor named Teppa Murakami treats a terminally ill woman named Mana who wants to hire the Revengers to kill her husband Inohachi and his boss Ten Mokuya, who both sold her into prostitution. Usui asks Kurima to join the Revengers, claiming that while their actions cannot be justified, they are the only people who can take vengeance for the people powerless to do it themselves. Eventually, Kurima accepts joining in the mission to kill Inohachi and Tenmokuya. And that night, Tenmokuya receives word that Inohachi is being targeted and orders him to leave the city. Teppa uses a massive compound bow to kill Inohachi's bodyguard, while Kurima slays Inohachi himself. Meanwhile, Usui and Neo assassinate Tenmokuya in his brothel. With the mission complete, Teppa leaves flowers at Mana's grave and offers a prayer to her. Neo takes Kurima on a tour around Nagasaki to familiarize him with the city's layout, where they witness the corrupt magistrate Sakata frame an innocent shopkeeper for opium smuggling. Usui arranges for Kurima to be Soji's roommate, much to Soji's annoyance. Usui then meets with the local government official Isarizawa, who asks him about Kurima's location and his involvement in Hirata's murder, though Usui feigns ignorance. Isarizawa then reveals that one of Sakata's victims has decided to hire the Revengers to eliminate Sakata, and Usui accepts the job. Teppa and Neo investigate him and discover that Sakata has secretly been framing other people to cover up his own opium smuggling operation. Soji volunteers to take the job and takes Kurima with him, making a bet that whoever has the most kills can take their room for themselves, And of course, Kurama and Soji then assault Sakata's residence, killing him and his bodyguards. But Kurama saves Soji from a hidden guard. Both men then return home with a newfound mutual respect for each other. Meanwhile, Teppa warns Usui that if Kurama gets too involved with the Revengers, it could spell trouble for them all, which Usui acknowledges. Soji was determined to help Kurama find a job, but it seemed like an uphill battle. Kurama was renowned for his remarkable swordsmanship, but in the bustling town of Edo, not everyone needed a skilled warrior. They explored various options, from farm work to odd jobs, but Kurama's lack of practical skills made it quite challenging. Meanwhile, Usui had managed to complete his mission of acquiring the bidden gold for Sakata's assassination. However, the Chapel, a shadowy organization that had hired him, refused to release the payment until the revenge mission was entirely fulfilled. This meant not only taking down Sakata, but also eliminating his opium supplier, Azumiya, and his mistress. The Revengers had inside information on the mistress's whereabouts, thanks to the network of informants. They hatched a plan to get Kurama involved by having him pose as a bookshop owner to keep an eye on Azumiya's movements. Kurama reluctantly agreed, but he soon found himself with plenty of free time between customers. One day, out of sheer boredom, Kurama picked up a brush and some paints he found in the shop. To his surprise, he discovered a hidden talent for painting. His artwork was nothing short of extraordinary, highly detailed and astonishingly realistic. He started filling the quiet hours by creating breathtaking landscapes and captivating portraits. He really thinks he's Bob Ross. As the sun sets, Kurama noticed Azumiya making a clandestine visit to his mistress's residence. With stealth and precision, he relayed this crucial information to the other Revengers. Teppa, their skilled archer, took aim and released an arrow that found its mark, and it ended Azumiya's life. Usui, on the other hand, swiftly eliminated the mistress, ensuring there were no loose ends. The next day, as the bookshop owner returned, he was astonished by the remarkable artwork Kurama had produced in his absence. He recognized Kurama's talent as a goldmine and offered to introduce him to publishers who could showcase his art to the world. The arrival of the Doan's Company circus in Nagasaki created quite a buzz in the town. Promising a spectacle of freak show exhibits, it drew curious crowds from all corners. Among those intrigued by the circus's presence were Kurama and Soji, who lived in a small house managed by Hana's family. Hana, the landlord's daughter, approached them with a troubled look on her face, revealing that her two friends, Badger and Weasel, had mysteriously disappeared overnight. Alarmed by this news, Kurama and Soji decided to take matters into their own hands. They couldn't ignore the worrying pattern of missing children, not just Badger and Weasel, but several others from the nearby mountains as well. In the midst of these unfolding events, Doan, the enigmatic owner of the circus, approached Usui with an offer to buy back Neo, the android girl who had become a part of their lives. Usui, however, staunchly refused. He had come to care deeply for Neo, and was determined to let her live as a human being, free from the constraints of her artificial existence. Usui shared his concerns with Kurama and Soji, suspecting that the Doan Company might be connected to the recent kidnappings. It seemed like a nefarious plot was at play. Meanwhile, Neo, with her innate sense of compassion, secretly visited Badger and Weasel. She handed them a gold coin and explained how to use it to summon the Revengers. The boys bit the coin as instructed, marking their plea for help. Kurama, Soji, and Teppa were quick to respond to the signal. They infiltrated the circus grounds, determined to uncover the truth behind the disappearances. In a series of intense confrontations, they managed to eliminate most of the Doan Company members who were involved in this sinister scheme. Neo, driven by a newfound determination, confronted Doan himself, putting an end to his cruel reign. The kidnapped children, including Badger and Weasel, were freed from their captivity and returned to their mountain homes, safe and sound. What a beautiful day. As the dust settled and the Revengers reassembled, Usui reiterated his unwavering commitment to raising Neo as a human being, providing her with love, care, and a chance at a genuine life. Kurama begins receiving commissions for his artwork, and he and Soji are forced to fight off a gang of thugs trying to capture him. Usui is summoned by Isarizawa, again, who warns him that the criminal underworld in Chinatown is searching for Kurama and are likely involved with the opium smuggling Hirata was investigating. Kurama decides to confront the Chinatown gang directly, believing that even if it results in death, it would be punishment for his involvement in Hirata and Yui's deaths. Knowing that Kurama's death would cause a scandal and expose them, the Revengers decide to keep an eye on Kurama. Kurama confronts the leader of the Chinatown gang, Master Liu, but is captured and interrogated. The Revengers raid Master Liu's boat and rescue Kurama, and he tells them that he has learned from his interrogators that they are searching for a massive stash of opium Matsumine had hidden in Nagasaki before his passing away. A young priest named Seiku is brought by his fellow priests to a temple managed by a group of nuns, which turns out to be a front for a male prostitution ring. Oh gosh, this is very freaky. Seiku, however, befriends one of the prostitutes, Ichinijo, and promises to help him escape. However, the nuns keep the prostitutes under their control with opium, and seeing Ichinojo resisting smoking his opium, they directly inject him with a large dose. Seiku is disillusioned upon seeing Ichinojo completely addicted and has him bite a gold coin to hire the Revengers. The Revengers eliminate the nuns while Kurama pursues the head nun, only to run into Liu again. Soji kills the head nun, and Liu withdraws when he sees he is outnumbered. The next day, Seiku is seen taking care of the former prostitutes, including Ichinojo. Meanwhile, Nagasaki Trade Union leader Shishido presents evidence to the magistrate that Sakata was murdered by the Revengers, causing the magistrate to order Isarizawa to investigate them. Isarizawa privately threatens Shishido not to escalate the opium trade, while Shishido muses on hiring Revengers to eliminate Isarizawa. Kurama begins having more success as an artist, and Usui gives him a small cottage he can work out of, and suggests that he can let his past go and live under a new identity, though Kurama is still dedicated to finding the missing opium. That night, Kurama visits a pub and meets a mysterious priest who he gets into a debate about the nature of killing with. Meanwhile, the chapel instructs Usui to kill Liu before he can find the opium, despite the lack of bidding gold. Usui is conflicted with following the chapel's orders without the necessary grudge, so Soji comes up with the idea of obtaining a bid in gold against Liu, which Usui agrees to since he has grown suspicious of the chapel's motives. Meanwhile, Shishido hires another Revenger team led by the priest who Kurama encounters earlier to carry out his grudges. Later that night, Neo infiltrates Chinatown to gather intelligence, but is caught by Liu. Kurama confronts Liu again, while Usui intercepts a letter that indicates Liu is an agent of the Chinese government. Liu hesitates when Kurama tells him he wants to destroy the opium, but at that exact moment, Liu is shot by a sniper from the 2nd Revenger team. Kurama carries Liu to Murakami's clinic to save him, as the Revengers find that no one in Chinatown actually bit the gold coin. Murakami manages to save Liu, and later tells Neo and Soji about how the English used opium taken from India to open up the Qing lands for trade and exploitation. Liu later tells Usui how he was charged by his government with wiping out opium stashes in the region, including Nagasaki. Usui and Murakami come to the uncomfortable conclusion that the chapel is in league with the opium dealer. Meanwhile, Shishido makes a deal with Sada's Revenger group to finish off Liu and the rest of his group in Chinatown. Liu convinces Kurama to take him to Chinatown, but in his injured state, is barely able to fight off a timid attacker before succumbing to his wounds. After hearing about the destruction of his forces, Liu bites into a gold coin for Kurama. Meanwhile, Sada takes on another job for Shishido, who frames Usui's group for the Chinatown attack, as the chapel nuns disavows them. Shishido then takes Sada into his storehouse, where he reveals his intention to make Nagasaki the new hub for opium trading. Isarizawa tells Usui about Shishido's recent moves to have his Revengers killed after framing them for the Chinatown massacre. Soji and Kurama are forced into hiding after a sniper shoots the decoy Soji set up at Hana's inn. Shishido invites Usui and some local businessmen as the two have a subtle debate over artwork, and Usui intuits Shishido wants to spread opium for the sake of causing suffering. Later, Usui visits the chapel on his own to get some answers. Gerald denies having a relationship with Shishido or giving Usui a false spitting coin, but says that if Japan falls under the influence of opium, that it is God's will. In response, Usui reveals a coin that Liu bit into and leaves. Intending to finish that job, Kurama tells Usui he intends to commit seppuku after finishing Liu's revenge, but Usui tells him that he could continue his art trade instead. Kurama wonders if that would make his late fiancée happier. Meanwhile, Soji heads into a gambling den where he discovers the new woman throwing dice in Shohan, and she is actually the chapel nun. She subtly rigs the dice in Soji's favor, then follows him outside in a different disguise, hinting that it was a payoff to turn him against Usui and Kurama. Both Revenger teams play a dangerous game of cat and mouse as they attempt to draw each other out. Meanwhile, the chapel nun asks Gerald why he continues to let Usui's group operate freely, and he replies that Usui still has his uses and he also plans to distribute the opium to destabilize Japan so that an independent Christian state can be founded in Kyushu. Soji then confronts Usui about his reasons for inducting Kurama into the group, and informed her that Kurama had killed him. Believing that Kurama deceived her to murder her father and steal his property, Yui bit a gold coin to issue a grudge against Kurama before killing herself. After realizing Kurama was used, Usui couldn't bring himself to kill him. Soji then considers using Yui's bitten gold as a pretext to kill Kurama, but changes his mind when Kurama saves him from Sada's sniper. Meanwhile, Teppa and Neo manage to trace the opium to a British lighthouse just off the coast, but they are detected in the process. With the opium located, Usui and his Revengers prepare to assault the lighthouse and face off against Sada's Revengers. Kurama, Soji, and Teppa assault the lighthouse while Usui and Neo raid Shishido's manor. Working together, Kurama, Soji, and Teppa are able to kill most of Sada's team, with Kurama killing Sada in single combat. Afterwards, Kurama finds Shishido's opium stash. Meanwhile, Usui and Neo eliminate Shishido's guards and confront Shishido himself. Shishido surrenders the opium to Usui, wanting him to continue his dream of turning Nagasaki and Japan into a living hell. Usui instead kills Shishido, proclaiming that no sinner can escape judgment. And at that moment, Kurama's group destroy the opium. Afterwards, the chapel accepts Usui's fulfilling of Liu's grudge, but caution him that the peace he brought to Nagasaki is only temporary. It is also revealed that the chapel nun has infiltrated Isarizawa's retinue of prostitutes. Teppa, Soji, and Neo continue their lives as normal, while Kurama quietly retires to his cottage to continue his beautiful art. However, despite fulfilling his mission, he still cannot overcome the guilt he felt over Yui's death. Eventually, Kurama travels back to the spot where he first met Usui, where he is fatally stabbed by a sole surviving member of Sada's group. Kurama quietly accepts his death and passes away peacefully, with Usui discovering his body shortly after. And after all of that, guys, I hope you guys did enjoy that recap. Make sure to comment down if you liked the ending or not, and I'll see you guys in the next video, and make sure to have an awesome day.